Roots was a very small budget organization. It was small when I got there, and it grew a little bit over the time I was there, but still relatively small organization. But the impact of that organization was huge. And I learned, I think for the first time, having come from the Manhattan Theater Club, which was much more established in New York City organization, that it isn't, that influence is really not about how big you are. Influence is about how smart you are and how strategic you are. And that's a lesson that I've been able to carry with me really through my entire professional life. That, I say this about creative capital, even though of course we're much bigger than that, that we're small but mighty, and the influence and impact of an alternate roots or a creative capital has absolutely nothing to do with budget. It has everything to do with the smart thinking behind the organizations. And I don't think that I would have been able, or really would have been smart enough to structure creative capital in this interesting and innovative way that it's been structured if I had not had the experience that I'd had with alternate roots. I hope that Roots will be able to continue its work long, long, long into the future, and to support Southeastern artists in a very deep way, and to influence the support systems for artists globally. I know that when I was at Roots, we were often visited by people from really all over the world who were looking to Roots as a model. We're experiencing the same thing here at Creative Capital, and I think that Roots is a beacon, I think, to a lot of organizations around the world and to a lot of artists. And it taught me so much, and I know that it's going to continue teaching others in the future. My birthday wish for Alternate Roots is that it continues to be brave. I think of it as a very brave organization. I hope that it will continue to influence the next generation of leaders as it influenced me. And I hope that one of the things that it will do, that is something that we try to do here at Creative Capital, is to always be re-examining the context that you're working in, to always be thinking about how the external environment is changing and how you need to create an organization that is endlessly responsive to an ever-changing external environment. Alternate Roots taught me so much that it's really, which I've internalized in all the intervening years. And so I think the structure of the organization was, for me, so unusual and really so radical. It would be radical now, but for that time, really amazing. Who comes was the Roots mantra. And it just meant, if you showed up, you got a say. If you didn't show up, you get no say. Don't bitch about what happens afterwards. So in that sense, it was a very practical organization, because you're not trying to round up people to vote on things when they're not there. They're there, they're part of it, they get a say. The other, I think, revolutionary idea was that every member of every member organization was a member of Alternate Roots, and therefore was a board member of Alternate Roots. So what that meant was that the organization was wholly owned by its membership. That is also a kind of radical notion. And what happened on a practical front was that the board of the organization every year elected representatives from the various regions in the South, the sort of sub-regions of the South, to represent them on the board. But the ownership of the organization resided with its membership. That was an amazing concept. The other thing is that the organization every year did one of two things. In alternating years, it held a retreat, and then the other year, it did a public event. So it was almost this kind of Buddhist withdrawal and return idea, that you take yourself away, that you put yourself in a smaller community environment, and then the next year you emerge and you make what you've done available to a public. And so those were things that all really fed into my thinking much later on, and particularly with creative capital. I think, you know, if you look at creative capital, if you sort of pull it apart, you can see the alternate roots fingerprints all over it, and it's something I'm really proud of.